I'm the Board Game Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and talking about the Bestiary from Pathfinder Second Edition. So, of course, this is the very first Bestiary, and I'm sure there will be more coming. This is the second of two essential products that you really need to run the Pathfinder Second Edition. The first one being the core rulebook that I have already released a full review on. While that contains the main rules for the game and is over 600 pages, so they wouldn't have room to put all the monsters in. This is a sizable book at, let's see, how many pages we got in this book here. This one rounds out to about 356 pages of monsters and NPCs for you to fight. Now, I say NPCs because not all of them are really monsters. Some might be possible allies for you. So to start off with, it starts with a introductory chapter. The introduction gives you a brief explanation of how to read the monster entries, how to read all of the various statistics of the creatures, how to use them, how to roleplay them if they are intelligent enough to be NPCs and speak, different icons and how to deal with their gear. And then it jumps right into the actual entries for the various creatures. Now, similar to the core rulebook, we have this sort of table of contents on the side, though this one is just broken up via letters. So if you're looking for creatures whose names start with a particular letter, because the creatures in this book are organized alphabetically, you can easily page through to find the right letters for the creatures you're looking for, which is really nice for when you're trying to look something up on the fly, because you're like, oh, I really need a catfolk. Boom, there's the catfolk. And catfolk is a perfect example of what I mean when I say it might not be a monster, it might be an NPC, because catfolk could definitely be thrown in as an ally or an NPC for you in the campaign. This is one that I hope will at some point see rules to be a playable player character race would be really nice. So now the races you have in here, you've got a lot of standard fantasy monsters, the kind of stuff you would also expect to see in most editions of Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, dragons and giants and elves and mimics and trolls and ogres and kobolds and liches and oh my, you know, lots of really cool monsters. Now, there is, of course, the notable exceptions of the things that Wizards of the Coast is copyrighted. So there's no, for instance, there are no Mind Flayers in here because they are apparently copyrighted by Wizards of the Coast. Or also, Lynn was a little bummed out that there are no gelatinous cubes. That is her favorite Dungeons and Dragons monster, the gelatinous cube. But it must be copyrighted by, that is my guess anyway, by Wizards of the Coast. But now there are some interesting additions. There are some monsters in here that you would not see in, say, a Dungeons and Dragons monster manual. So a couple of the interesting additions are, they have some mythos monsters in here from the Cthulhu mythos. Specifically, there is a Shoggoth, which if you're familiar with the Cthulhu mythos, you know what a Shoggoth is. And there is a Gug also in here. Now, I like that. I also like that in their big descriptions, because when you look at the monsters, the first thing you get is a big description about it, sometimes a little sidebar that tells you some interesting facts about it, and then the stat block. And in the description, they actually do reference the great old ones of the Cthulhu mythos. So I do know that in first edition Pathfinder they did a separate book totally on the Cthulhu mythos, so that you could do a little genre bending sword and sorcery mixed with cosmic horror, and I think that's awesome that they did that, and I hope they do that again now for second edition. And judging by the fact that they actually included a couple mythos monsters in the main book, I'm going to take a wild guess that they're going to be doing that. So that's pretty cool. Now all the monsters are okay, I love that they give the storyline first, because that gives you a lot of idea about where would my party encounter these monsters. What kind of other things might they encounter with these monsters? What sort of treasure might these monsters be guarding? And then they give you their keywords, their levels, so you know how difficult they are, all of their stats. And the stat block is very simple in that they have a list of attacks that they do and how many actions their attacks take up, and what kind of bonuses to their D20 roll they get. They, of course, also have their armor class and other stats all fully listed. So these are very easy to use right out of the book. Only thing I jot down is hit points so I can mark when they're taking damage. If my party were, say, fighting more than one monster at a time, and I would need to keep track of multiple monsters' life totals, then I would have to jot them down. But that's it, is the life. Everything else is here, and it's so easy to use right out of the book, which is great. Now, once you're done with the monsters, we get down to the last section, which is the zombies. And once you get past the zombies, you have the appendix. Now, in the appendix, first we have an ability glossary. So all of the abilities like dark vision or change shape or engulf are fully explained here, so you can look them up. The things that are not as self-evident just from looking at the stat block. So some of these abilities require more explanation, and they're all in here in the appendix, which is very nice. They have very easy to look up. You just flip to the back of the book, and there you are. Then we've got some interesting new rituals. It says here, I'm quoting the book, it says, some creatures from the outer planes can use special rituals to call their kin or transport themselves to another plane. So you have some new spells that might be used by monsters or NPCs, or maybe even you might even decide to let player characters get some of these. You have things like Abyssal Pact, Angelic Messenger, Infernal Pact. Then we move into new languages, and these are the new languages for some of the races here that were not available as player races, so you might not have known. So, for instance, Amurun is a language used by the Catfolk. So now you know that is their main language. Then we've got the listings of all the different creature types. And this is brilliant. This is a really good addition to the appendix. Something I will be using every time I'm making a game or looking up monsters, and that is the creatures listed by level. Because it's very important, you don't want to give a creature that's too low or too high a level to your opponents, to your players. So it starts with -1 all the way up through, let's see what the highest level monster we've got in this book is, all the way up to a level 25. Now, of course, you can fight monsters of higher level than yourself, especially considering that the level cap in Pathfinder Second Edition is 20. So some of these monsters would be higher than your characters would ever attain in standard levels in the game. And of course, some of them are lower than you would start out as, because we have level -1 and level 0 monsters. But when you're a level 1 character, fighting a handful of level -1s could be for an easy challenge. The first combat of the first game, first combat of the second game, third game. Something that to help get them warmed up and not be a super big challenge. Easy creatures to fight, things like a flash beetle or a giant centipede or a giant rat. These are minor threats and not super dangerous. But then, if you in those early games, you might throw some level 2 and even level 3 creatures at your party to be more of a challenge for the end boss of that particular game. Now, this book is great. I like how all of the monsters, very much so, I like how all of the monsters will have their own background to tell you where you're going to find them, who they might have with them, what their motivations are, how intelligent they are, how they fight, and then they have a great stat block, very easy to use, very easy to just turn the page. Like I say, all you need is a bit of scrap paper to keep track of hit points, especially for the higher hit point monsters. But yeah, this is a phenomenal book. Great artwork in here. I love the artwork of the monsters. The monsters just look fantastic. The cover art is a good example of exactly how beautiful the art direction for this book was. And it's very well organized. Now, I don't have any gripes about this book. Lynn had some funny gripes about the monsters she misses that she wishes were in here, like the gelatinous cube. But I mean, they instead of a gelatinous cube, you could have a Shoggoth, so that's pretty awesome. I think this is a really, really well put together bestiary. And if you're playing Pathfinder Second Edition, if you're getting the core book and you're going to game master it, you have to get this book. I mean, you really can't do it without this book. This book is integral to your being able to run a game of this. If you're a player character, it's less integral. So if you're a player character, I definitely think player characters should get the core rulebook so they can look at all the abilities and the skills and figure out how to properly optimize their characters as they level up. This is the sort of thing as a player character you would get specifically if you like reading about the monsters, you just like to be a completionist and own all the stuff. It's not necessary for you as a player character, though. But for a game master, you have to have this. And as a player character, I'd have this too, just because I am a completionist and I like reading about all the monsters and stuff. So this is a really, really well put together bestiary, and the biggest reason I like it so much is how user-friendly it is, which seems to be the key word for Pathfinder Second Edition. Everything is done super user-friendly. So I'm going to give, I gave a 10 to the actual rules and the core rulebook. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10 stars. And the only reason I'm pulling back 1 star, and 9 is still an amazingly high rating, but the only reason I'm pulling back that 1 star is because I maybe would have liked it to be a little thicker, and it could have charged me more for it and had a few more monsters in here. There's a lot of great monsters in here, don't get me wrong. You've got all the standard dragons and trolls and orcs and minotaurs. And wait, is there a minotaur in here? Yes, there is the minotaur in here. You've got all the standard monsters you would want for a standard fantasy game, but I would have liked more unique monsters to differentiate it a little more from the Dungeons and Dragons typical fare. I would have liked a few more iconic, unique monsters made up just for the second edition of Pathfinder. That being said, it's incredibly user-friendly, it's incredibly nice, the art is amazing, and I'm giving it 9 out of 10 stars, and my one gripe is a very minor one. So there you have it. So that is 9 out of 10 stars for the Pathfinder Bestiary. I can't wait to see the additional bestiaries. I like just reading about the monsters, even when I'm not running a game, because I like owning like monster manuals just to read about the monsters and check out their storyline and their stats, and even when I'm not running a group. So there you have it. I highly recommend Pathfinder Bestiary. And if you are a game master, you have to get this. So if you enjoyed this review of the Pathfinder Bestiary for 2nd edition Pathfinder, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Kaptain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And hit that little bell icon on my channel so you get alerts every time I upload a new video. And until next time, game on.